It is all about motion. We declare that the splendor of the world has been enriched by a new beauty. The beauty of speed. In this presentation I will compare two works that attempted to change and advance how we as a society capture and study motion. The Galloping Horse by Eadweard Muybridge and Umberto Boccioni, unique forms of continuity in space. We are at the beginning of a new era, the mechanical industrial era, the dawn of scientific study of the material world. Artists had long struggled to capture movement and motion. Ever since Leonardo da Vinci had meticulously studied the wing flaps of birds, artists had tried to fill the gap between motionless subjects and a subject on the move. For centuries artists had tried to picture how people and animals would be if captured in motion. Traditional ways of depicting emotion in art was to study a still subject and imagine how it would be seen as if it was moving. This, however, is cumbersome, stiff and rigid. Take a person walking. Artists would have his model pose with one foot in front of another as to depict movement. Standing as a posing model, often for hours at a time, in the same position really is the opposite of motion, and the results were inevitably stiff, rigid and statuesque. The invention of the photograph in 1826 or thereabout changed all this. Artists started to make use of photographs to replace the live models as a study for their objects. Not the least for the reason that they could freeze a certain movement and convert that into a canvas. Eadweard Muybridge was a pioneer of scientific research and motion analysis. He invented a camera system consisting of 12 individual negative film cameras, each triggered milliseconds after each other, to collect a series of motion pictures. Muybridge created mechanical shutters, made of wood, rubber springs and a trigger that would snap closed within 1/1000th of a second. It would be a major move away from the way most photographers controlled light exposure at the time, by manually removing a lens cap and quickly placing it back onto a camera. The Galloping Horse photo series taken by Eadweard Muybridge in 1878 is the first high-speed imaging with 12 cameras at 1 millisecond interframe rate. This settled the question whether during a horse's gallop, all four hooves were ever off the ground at the same time. It was a large breakthrough and an opening into the scientific methodology later to be prevalent in using instruments to study and understand the world around us. He showed the world what could be guessed but never seen, every stage of a horse's gallop when it sped across a track. To do it, Muybridge hung a white sheet, painted walls at the track white, and spread white marble dust and lime on the ground, so the dark-colored horse would pop against the backdrop. The horse galloped down the track pulling a cart. In its path were 12 tripwires, each connected to a different camera. As the horse sped down the path, the cart's wheels rolled over each wire, and the shutters fired one after another, and captured the horse in different stages of motion. After earlier photos of a horse in motion were accused of being fake or dismissed, Muybridge exposed the negatives on site, and showed the press a series of images of a galloping horse, including one of the horse with all four hooves off the ground. Muybridge's multi-camera concept was also applied in the Manhattan Project. This was motion capture in its infancy, completely equal to everything we experience as new, inventive and exciting in today's digital world. At the turn of the 20th century we are talking the dawn of hardcore applied science, the early decades of the industrial age and the mechanical world. Things were in motion. The first mass-produced car, Ford T, came to the market in 1908. The telephone was invented in 1876. The first airplane arrived at the scene in 1903. A new era was emerging and the youth wanted, as always, to rebel against the stagnating old societies, and art reflected that. Umberto Boccioni, born 19th of October 1882, became one of the key figures in the Italian futurist movement. Futurism, Futurismo, originated in Italy in the early 20th century and was originally a literary movement but soon became an artistic and social movement that emphasized on dynamism, speed, technology, youth, violence, and objects such as the car, the airplane, and the industrial city, etc. Out with the old, in with the new. As any youth artist movement, the futurists rebelled against the establishment. Part of that was to break out of the enslavement of antiquity. Being born in Italy, one is literally living in a museum filled with classical art, marble statues, weathered frescoes, architecture and mosaics. However fascinating and brilliant these artworks are, the futurists saw it as a stagnation and oppression. It was, in their view, an obstacle to innovation and creativity. The old was to be fought and really eradicated. Do not look back, look into the future. Boccioni and the other futurists even embraced the coming World War as a natural development, one that would destroy the remnants of the past and triumphantly bring humans and machines closer together in a victory for the human race. The futurists wanted to destroy the museums. Everything stemming from the old was essentially bad, but in the end, ironically, and probably unavoidably, their work was added to the canon of Italian art and became an attraction in museums around the world. Boccioni soon became one of the leading theorists in the futurist movement, but only after he and other prevalent members of the movement went to Paris in 1911 the movement began to take shape. Umberto Boccioni, Unique Forms of Continuity in Space, is a study of a figure in motion. He had been emigrating from painting into sculpture, through his discovery of Cubism. But although Cubism is merely known today through famous paintings of Picasso and Braque, the Cubists experimented with sculptures and relief artworks as well. It is worth noting that the approach is what matters here. The Cubists' artistic vision was to break out of the single-imaged plane. In essence, they aimed for capturing their subject from any angle at once, to truly capture a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional plane. In a sense, this is exactly analogous to what Boccioni was trying in his Unique Forms of Continuity in Space, to capture a movement in a single image. To really understand, let me take an example from a notorious artist from the same time period, someone who Boccioni must have met in his visits to Paris, Marcel Duchamp. In his painting from 1912 Nude Descending a Staircase, Duchamp is using the Cubist approach, not merely to capture his subject from various angles at once, but to depict a movement. It is impossible to say if Boccioni was inspired by this work, but not unlikely. In any case, the attempts are similar, to capture motion in a static picture. So to conclude about the connections between Umberto Boccioni's Unique Forms of Continuity in Space and Eadweard Muybridge's Galloping Horse, I will state that they have two fundamental aspects that connect them. First, they represent modernity. They marked a dawn of the era of mechanism, science and progress. Second, they are a study of emotion, one being a scientific one, the other an artistic one. Not to be disrespectful, but perhaps, if nothing else, these two visual objects might be considered correlated by some freakish twist of fate. One is picturing a galloping horse and the other made by an artist trampled to death by a galloping horse. Call it a divine justice, or a karma. The main architect of the futurist movement, who advocated for speed in war, was trampled to death after falling from his horse on a military exercise, preparing to enter the war. He died at age of 33.